want briefly to tell a story that reveals the intimate connections between mathematical reasoning and some of life's most unanswerable questions. Modern probability was born centuries ago with Blaise Pascal and Pierre Fermat's solution to the problem of the interrupted game. Their correspondence of 1654 tackles the following puzzle. Two players have each staked 32 pistoles and have agreed that the entire pot of 64 will go to whomever is the first to win 3 games. Each is equally likely to win any single game. With player A leading 2 games to 1, the wager is interrupted. How should the 64 pistole be divided? The problem of the interrupted game was far from new. Different versions had been tackled unsuccessfully by a number of scholars from the 15th century onwards. While differing in details, virtually all solutions proposed thus far shared one assumption. What counted in allocating the money was primarily what had already been played and won. What truly mattered was the given or the known past. By contrast, Pascal decisively begins with the uncertain future. Imagine continuing the interrupted game whose possible outcomes are depicted on the slide above. If A wins, he will have won 3 games, and with that, the entire 64 pistole. If he loses, however, the players will have won 2 games apiece, and if the match were now interrupted, then each would simply get back his own stake. Consider then, monsieur, says Pascal, that if the first wins, 64 will belong to him. If he loses, 32 will belong to him. Consequently, A reasons, I'm sure of 32 pistoles, since even a loss gives them to me. As for the other 32, perhaps I will have them, perhaps you will have them, the risk is equal. Let us therefore divide the 32 pistole in half, and give me the 32 of which I am certain besides. So A receives 48, and B 16. Rather than being guided entirely by an already known past, Pascal instead built a crucial distinction into the imagined future, between a case where one is certain and another one where one is to accommodate uncertainty. The trace of genius here is to proceed in a direction that inverts the course of time, determining the certain starting out from the uncertain, the present starting out from the future. But the stakes of reasoning thus about what by chance far exceed the seemingly trivial gamble. For Pascal's ultimate wager concerns the inevitable and always untimely interruption of an altogether more consequential game, that of life itself. His problem is as follows. Since our limited reason cannot prove that God exists, how should we act? At the far end of this infinite distance, Pascal writes, a game is being played, and that coin will come up heads or tails. How will you wager? Reason cannot make you choose one way or the other. Reason cannot make you decide. And nor can you get out of the game. Simply by being born, you are embarked. Given the fundamental uncertainty, can we nonetheless rationally decide to behave as if God existed or not? I will not recount the complex stages of Pascal's solution here, moving swiftly instead to its conclusion. The second slide shows the 4 possibilities confronting us. If God exists and we act as if he exists, our potential expectation is salvation, an infinite reward. And so Pascal argues that as long as there's a finite probability that God exists, no matter how small this probability be, our expectation in acting as if God exists either exceeds or is at worst no worse than our expectation in any other scenario. Hence, thinking probabilistically about the fatal interruption to the game we all must play must lead us to the decision to lead our life as if God existed, whether or not we know this to be true, and indeed, whether or not we believe this to be true. Let me end by contrasting Pascal's wager to Hamlet's musings in his famous to be or not to be soliloquy. Who would bear the whips and scorns of time, Shakespeare's existentially challenged protagonist asks, when he might himself his quietus make with a bare bodkin? What holds Hamlet back from choosing not to be is the dread of something after death, which makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. We glimpse here the dark underside of the Pascalian wager. Whereas Pascal weighs the infinity of potential salvation against a certain finitude of human pleasure, Hamlet counterposes the possibility of an unending damnation to the finitude of human misery. Infinite gain provides the rationale for decision and action, infinite pain, the reason for not acting, for postponing decision. Thank you.
So we finish on a really big theme. I can't help observing the interesting conjunction of the place and the problem of Pascal's wager.
Not intentional, I assure you.
I'm trying to remember some of the debates that went on about that argument among philosophers, and one of the things that was said, it's not perhaps to your main point, but one of the things that was said, of course, is that Pascal does make a crucial assumption about what God wants. If God wants everybody to believe in his existence, then Pascal's wager works. If God wants everybody to go by their best lights and use their minds honestly and openly, then it seems a dangerous thing to live as if God exists when you don't believe that he does. So isn't there a bit of a problem with this argument?
Well, I mean, there are many problems with this argument, depending on what the... I mean, as Diderot would put it, I mean, the other thing Pascal assumes is a Christian God. As Diderot put it, an imam could argue just as well. But it seems to me the result is less important, because what all that points to is the nature... I mean, what's important about Pascal is actually a certain method of thought, because what's at stake is constructing an outcome space, which is what constrains the problem. Once you construct an outcome space in a particular kind of way, then the result follows. But if it's a different problem, you construct a different outcome space. Yeah. In a sense, it's close to Wolfgang's notion. What he's providing and what's important is that it actually functions as a certain model for thinking, not whether or not the answer is right or wrong, which is actually less important.
I agree. Thank you. Please.
So I have two remarks. The first is that, of course, you can repeat the argument. You must live as if this God exists, but by the same argument, you must also live as if Quetzalcoatl exists and wants you to sacrifice human life.
So I can't follow I can't really hear
by the same argument, you must not only believe that the Catholic God exists, which is a Catholic God in which Pascal wants us to believe, but you must also believe that Quetzalcoatl exists and wants you to sacrifice a human life before tomorrow, and you must also believe that everything else that you propose exists. And the crux of the matter is that by positing infinite something somewhere, what you're doing is you're intimidating your audience into believing that this is the thing that you cannot compare to anything else.
Okay.
But I can't
follow the question.
Okay, I think we're only partly understanding what you're saying, but again, you're critiquing Pascal, and I think we ought to concentrate on what our speaker's inviting us to think about, which is the move to the future, as the uncertain future, as a way of trying to...
Well, there is a kind of basic thing that's quite crucial to Pascal's assumptions, which is that any probability assumed has to be thought of as positive. It can be tiny, but if the probability of God existing was zero, then you actually this thing wouldn't work at all, right? So that's because 0 is divided by 0 gives you, or multiplied by infinity, is non-definable as a thing. So that part is certainly true.
Okay. Please.
It seems you're collapsing the probability wave here in deciding one way or the other. Can one not... and in some ways, it seems it constrains the possibilities of the mathematics to have to choose one way or the other as well. There's a lot to be said for the fuzzy logic of militant agnosticism on this question, which is where I evangelize, of course. But so you're deciding the cat is dead, the cat is not dead, one way or the other.
No, actually, I think you're misunderstanding the problem. Pascal actually doesn't, as Pascal points out, you cannot rationally, in fact, prove that God exists or not. Therefore, you're actually not deciding whether or not God exists or not. That's not the problem of Pascal. Pascal's problem is, should you behave as if God existed or not? And that's what he's trying to develop. And in order for that to take place, in fact, what's curious about Pascal's argument is that he actually doesn't believe that belief is a necessary condition at all. So that the person who is, in fact, his objector, the interlocutus, asked Pascal, but I don't know how to believe. What should I do? I can't generate belief. Pascal says, don't worry. Go to church, act as believers do, say your masses, pray, and belief will come. So it's not actually, he doesn't make the assumption that you actually know about the world. What is you're making a decision under conditions of complete uncertainty.
But there is a third option, which is to act as if you do not know.
Well, for Pascal, in his own universe, that would actually collapse into one of the alternatives he gives you. So that actually, for Pascal, that wouldn't work. But in any case, my point is not trying to justify Pascal's decision about the world.
I get that.
It's to think about the nature of the problem that Pascal poses, because it's this problem that allows want to see how the birth of mathematical thought is in fact connected to far larger issues. So the point is not really to worry about Pascal's right or wrong, it's kind of a relevant question in some sense, right?
Okay. How general is this shift that you're describing in Pascal, in the reasoning? You seem to want to claim that there's a cultural change here.
Yes, I do want to claim that. We'll have to take the questions later on.
Now, I want to close this very swiftly, but I have two things to do. The first is that I know something that Sung Kim doesn't know that I know. If you think we're getting into even more complicated territory here, let me explain. Sung has done a great deal of the work to bring this festival together, and it happens to be her birthday. So come up here. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, we're going to go through for refreshments next door, and I'm going to ask the speakers to lead the way. But first, they are superstars. They've entertained us enormously. They demonstrate, if nothing else, that science connects every conceivable aspect of life in interesting ways. If I could ask our speakers to stand, please give them a huge round of applause.